And there's the live broadcast, and it's actually live. Look at us go. Like real live broadcasters. We're so professional.
I know. 2 seasons, and we actually completed a full one.
We did. And we can now kind of recap and see what happens. I've never done this live on YouTube. This is a new thing for me. You have, right? You've done a YouTube live? Okay, cool. Very, very cool. That's neat. So, yep, everybody, no intro music. No reason to introduce us, because if you're watching this, you've probably watched some of our other episodes. If you're just watching this,
sorry,
you might want to go back and try to experience some other things before you watch this one, because, we have no real specifics here except to kind of recap some of the fun we've had over this past year. Steph and I have each done a style of for each other. I have a few questions to throw at Steph after we kind of get through all the basics, and that's really it. So I don't even think we really need to introduce ourselves or anything, because I feel like again, if people don't know, it'd be really weird if they were watching this and had no idea who we were. If you don't know who we are and you're watching this live, you're welcome to hang out, but I can't guarantee you're going to get anything out of this. So there you have it.
It'll be okay otherwise. Watch the episode before this and then jump back in.
Exactly. Yeah, then you'll get a sense of what's going on.
Okay. So I'm going to pull up the slideshow, and it's starting with your before and after, and then mine. So just figure whatever.
So interesting.
It's weird doing our own, because it's makes me cringe sometimes when I look at my own stuff.
But this is really interesting, because this as my first photo is pretty special for me, because this was how it began. This is gonna sound really ridiculous. I can't believe I'm asking you this, but you are my keeper. Is this actually the first image, or did I do anything prior to this? Okay, I wasn't sure. This was sort of the beginning, and it's funny. It's so weird that this is the one, because the Oreos were a kind of a joke with my godmother, my cousin, my family. I guess I will give a little backstory really quick. This is really fast. If you want to know more about this, you can listen to podcasts from long ago. But when COVID started, my mom had not moved in permanently, but was staying with us because she was going to be getting her radiation treatment very nearby. And then, because my dad was still going to work, she ended up truly staying. She stayed with us for most of the lockdown here in the US. She was there from the beginning to the end. And there were 2 big parts of our lockdown as a family, and one was Oreos and one was Legos. That was so the Oreos were constantly a joke. We were we'd order them in our ShopRite orders, our shop from home orders. We always had Oreos in the house for the entire lockdown. There was never a time there were not Oreos in the house. And some of my family members in New Jersey, it was a joke. We were constantly sending each other trying the different flavors and stuff. So there were way too many Oreos in the house at any given time. So there's something kind of fun about this photo, because it really did. My toy photography journey started with COVID, which was surrounded by Oreos, and it also started with the Micro Machines. Those were the first toy photos I took, and they were just with my phone. It was just a silly. There was no plan to go much farther with it. It really was just let's play around. I started by posting them on my personal page. I didn't have an F-Stop Rebel page. I just was posting them to make people laugh, like my family members and stuff. And there's still some posted on my personal page that never even made it to my F-Stop Rebel page. Which you guys are welcome to follow that if you want. I don't know why you would, but it's mostly just pictures of my kids. But yeah, it's really interesting that this is the first photo, because it really does nail it. Am I freezing a little bit? I look like I'm freezing a little bit.
Every now and again, but it's okay. It's not a big deal. We can still hear you just fine.
That's fine. All right. I don't care what my face looks like. I can do that the whole time. So yeah, that's interesting. And then this photo was honestly up until Steph, I'm not gonna lie, up until When was that? Whenever I took the photos of you, up until I took the photos of you for our thing, this was like one of the last photos I took, toy photography wise. And I posted it in November, but I took it in like August. So when I was on a trip, so which is kind of crazy to think about. But I took some other photos the other day finally again. I've been a little busy, y'all. I got a newborn and a wild life at the moment. So and a wild toddler who's just totally destroying everything in rebellion. So, but that's fun.
We're going out today to take some too, because I've been in the same boat. Last few months have been mostly work and kids, and then getting into the holidays. So it's kind of nice to do this and kind of sit back and look at everything.
Yeah.
I have a weird question, and this is just me being silly. How did you decide how thick you wanted the borders and where you wanted them? Because I think they've changed.
So there's two things I've done, and it's really specific. And you guys, I know you all, like, again, if you're watching this, you kind of know me at this point. I'm super weird. When I do the digital photos, so I do not crop. I keep them, except for your photos and Justin's photos. I think those are the only two sets of photos that I've ever cropped, because you don't crop quite as long. You tend to be a little more closer to square than full rectangle. So I leave them full frame, which is a 4:6 ratio with the cameras that I shoot with typically. And so all I do then is I add a white border to the top and the bottom so that the edge of the photo goes right. When you're scrolling through my feed, you see the full frame. It doesn't cut it at all. So if I don't add those borders, what ends up happening is, which a lot of people already know this, like if you don't add those borders, when you're scrolling, Instagram will preview it as a smaller image. But I'm like really adamant about like the size. The iPhone photos, I think I cropped all of them. I specifically shot them all in 16:9. I could totally be making that up, but I feel like they're roughly 16:9, give or take. And then I just left a full extended border completely around it with them centered in the middle. I think I wanted them to be tinier because they were tiny toys, so I just thought it would be funny. But I pretty much stuck to that. And if I ever do micro machines again, I think I'm going to go right back to that ratio. I got to figure out what it is though, because I think it's somewhere around there, but I haven't looked. But yeah, pretty much every image you see that I've taken, I'll crop a little bit, but I'll always keep it true to 4:6. Even in my personal photography, I don't tend to go in other sizes. Like this Christmas, like every Christmas we get our family like photos of the kids and stuff like that. It's so weird because I always shoot like pictures of my son and other son now, 4:6, and an 8x10 is 4:5. So I'm like losing a huge chunk on either side, and I don't always think that way when I'm photographing because I do think in full frame. Yeah, so I think that's really where that kind of, the borders honestly came from that, because I was really obsessed with the idea of people seeing the entire image. The person who really got me hooked on a full frame image was my friend Noah in Boston. He was a film shooter, shoots Leicas now, mostly even digital Leicas, and always shoots in 35mm format. And so he's a real believer in you shoot it the way you see it, and you don't do any cropping. So whenever I shoot film, I don't crop at all. Like I don't change anything. Whatever you see, if there's ever a film image on my feed, which I've done a handful, not many, but you ever see like a film image, there's zero cropping. I've never cropped anything out of a film image. Digital, I'm a little more. I give it a little bit more flexibility. But Noah, I think, was the one who really, I had always kind of believed in it anyway, but he sort of set it in stone for me. He was like, a real believer in that. And I loved it. I love that thought process because it puts a little bit more focus on the shooting process and a little less focus on the editing process. And I want to specify, there's nothing wrong with cropping images. I'm not like one of those people who thinks that like anyone listening shouldn't crop your images. I'm just saying for me, it brought more of the experience to the photographing aspect and less to the editing aspect. It's one less thing you have to work with on your computer, and the less I have to work with on my computer, the happier I am. I'd rather be actually taking the pictures than doing anything with them later. Most photo edits that you see, unless I put some serious like blaster effects, which is only a handful, I do not. I try really hard not to take much more than like 30 minutes to edit like a series. Like
Yeah.
I really don't want to sit at the computer and do it. I want them just done and done. I have presets that I've created that I just use, and then I'll like manipulate it just a little bit to balance it out. But like my Lightroom usage, I try to really, really keep down. Again, unless like there's a photo, heads up, I'm going to be posting in a few days where I did like some blaster effects. I just shot this yesterday, 2 days ago. Yeah, I sat on Photoshop for way too long and I got really bored and I gave up after a little bit. I was like, okay, I'm done with this. No, not in a bad way. I was just like, this is fine. It looks good. It looks good. I'm going to post it. But I'm just not, I don't love that part. I never really enjoyed that part of it. And it's so funny because people have sent me messages, and you know, if you're watching this, like people have sent me messages like, oh, I really love your editing style. And I wish I could be like, oh man, I take hours. I sit there and I go, no, I really try not to. Like I don't like it. Like this photo of Boba Fett, I swear that is mostly out of camera. I think I might have, if any of you are Lightroom familiar, I might have like flattened the tone curve just a little bit, just because I didn't like, I'm not a huge lover of contrast. I like things to be a little flatter. It's for me, for my photos, I actually like contrast in other people's photos for some reason. Like your photos, I love how contrasty they are. That's one of the things I love about your images. But for mine, they never seem to make sense contrasty. It's just like I do it and I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous. So yeah, I pretty much just kind of like flattened this one out a little bit and took down the saturation and exported and sent it up there. So, but yeah. So
I'll get into that later when we get through your feed, because that was one of
gosh.
my main observations. Analyzing. I tried really hard to get into your mindset of looking at your account.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. Are you ready for mine? Mine are ridiculous.
I am. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I purposely did not scroll all the way back. I almost did the other day. This is, I am honestly envious of you, because this photo and this photo side by side, the evolution is enormous. And I'm always a little bit more like sensitive with like our guests, but like I love you to death, so I'm not really worried about this. Like this first photo, there's nothing here. It's just such a simple photograph. Like it's hilarious. Like how did you get from there to this unbelievably like balanced, lit, making the figures pop, separating the figures from the background, but still keeping it dark and deep? Like the idea of that, and I'm jealous because you've had such a long ride, and we've talked about this before. I don't think you weren't into photography prior to this. So this kind of just sort of like happened, and you became a great like photographer like through the toy photography. And I'm going to say, I'm not calling myself a great photographer by any means, but I feel like you would see a bigger juxtaposition if you went back and looked at my portrait photography from when I did it more like professionally, and you looked from like when I was 18 taking photos to when I was in like my late 20s taking photos. I think there was that you would have seen this dramatic change. But for me, because I kind of came into it already playing with photography prior, it's I feel like you don't get to see that drama. It's so what even made you do this? Like what made you take that photo? Like what were you thinking? You just wanted to go out and like take a shot?
Yeah, I think like I wasn't even on toy photography brought me to Instagram. I didn't do social media. I did like a little bit of Facebooking, like things. And Devin, my boyfriend, was like, "Hey, why don't you check out?" He knew Captain Dangerous like personally through like video game stuff, and I remember looking at her stuff. I'm like, "Oh, this is kind of cool." Whatever. And this is on my phone, the first one.
Yeah,
so
of course.
I literally was just out and about. But like I always think that the two things that I go back to is like natural environment and then like my Nendroid. So
yeah, you never left that. You never left that. And that's what's cool. I think you still clearly wanted to spend time out in the woods, which obviously is something I can relate to as well with you. Hey, Sabrina, which is something I can connect to you 100% on. I think that's something that we've always bonded it with. Is I would way prefer, and I'm going to be honest, guys, I don't care if it's like 10 degrees out. I'd rather be shooting outside than in my basement. I just would. I purposely got away from like portrait photography and stuff don't really want to look at lights anymore. Now I'm going to play with them a little bit. Steph already knows I bought some lights specifically to do her photo shoot. It was the first time I ever took small LEDs out into the wilderness. Yeah, I think that clearly is still your staple. That is what you connect with, is these, making these characters pop in a natural environment. You don't throw up a lot of like extra stuff. You don't, you're not covering them with props or anything like that. You're not setting up these big scenes. You have like your dio pieces, but even your dio pieces you tend to bring out into the woods, which I love too. You don't spend a lot of time like, setting up that bridge in your house. You bring it somewhere and you set it up. And that's one of the best things about your behind the scenes video is you go through the complexity of some of these indoor photographers, but you take it out into the wilderness, which is, I think, so rad that you do that you take the time to bring these like dioramas into nature. I just think that's so cool. But this is such an unbelievable juxtaposition. So out of curiosity, the other thing I think is funny too is like we sort of talked about with my cropping. Your cropping changes. You're pretty like open. You kind of go with the flow of the photo. And I think I kind of touched on it when I talked about your photos, is you explore. I think you explore a lot more than I do when it comes to this kind of stuff. You are much more like, let's give this a shot and see what happens. And I couldn't really do that until we started doing in the style of photos. What decides your crop? Like, obviously this first one looks kind of like it was just sort of shot with the phone, whatever. But like, what makes you decide? Like, is it just the way the figures fit into the frame? Were you thinking this was going to be a slightly longer photo than normal when you took it? You just go with it.
It's funny how, like, because I'm going out today and Eva's visiting Greater Beast, so I'm super excited for her to sit there.
I sent her a message the other day. I said, next time she goes, I'm going to.
So, like, we're going to go out today, and so she's going to have to, like, watch me work. And it's an odd process. I don't have a set, like you're talking about how you have set stuff on your, when you edit.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't even imagine trying to set those presets, because every time I go in there, it depends on how I'm feeling and how I look at the image and what the characters represent. Because these guys are always like they're going layer by layer underground into different worlds of this big abyss, and so to me, it's gonna be completely new and completely different for each of those characters in there. And then you'll have other characters that are bright and fun, so they're gonna need I like getting more close-ups on those fun moments, so it also just depends on what's happening. But I got those turtle mushroom things. They're just designer toys that I grabbed. And I'm like, these are perfect for these guys, so it was a lot of fun. But I don't usually shoot this long, you're right. But I also started cropping a lot more because I was tired of Instagram making my photos look goofy from when I moved them over. So actually doing your challenge, I realized that the borders do help with that. And so you're going to end up getting more of it, because I like little pieces of like the ground lit up in certain places that I sometimes don't get because they're outside of like where the figures are.
Oh gosh, yeah. Like, and I've said this, like the borders for me, and I've said this to people who like follow my personal page too, because I tend to put borders on there too. My borders are less of an aesthetic thing and more of a control thing, which all of you know I have major issues with that. For the record, not with people. I just want everybody to know I'm not like a control freak when it comes to human beings. It's just myself. But it's the borders for me were kind of for Instagram to leave me alone. Like, that's why I do it. It wasn't like because I think they look cute or look cool or give it a special vibe. Like, that's not really what it is for me. It's more that like I want Instagram to leave my photos alone and not turn them into something else. Like, I had a very specific vision of what I wanted this to look like, and if people are scrolling through and they see it all like cut the sides out and I'm missing characters, the edge of this and the edge, that's not what I intended. I intended it to fill the frame a particular way, and I think that's really important. There are a few toy photographers out there who do similar things, and I love that. I love people utilizing the entire, making sure, again, Instagram does not take our photos back. Like, this is the way I want it presented. I don't want it presented the way, this algorithm thinks it should be presented. I want it the way I want it. Like, but that's when you work in a square system. Instagram was based on squares, built on the idea of squares. So you kind of have to fight against it. But yeah, I've always loved your framing. I always think that I think your framing is really spot on. I think just your placement it's classic but adventurous at the same time, if that makes any sense. Like it's very it's how you would hope it would be. I think, for someone as adventurous as you and creative as you, I think it would be more likely, I would expect you to have more kind of like, what just happened? Like, why did I crop it like that? But you really don't. Like, as wild as you kind of like go from here to there and try this out and try this out, like, you don't tend to stick to one thing. The framing always makes a lot of sense. It always feels like it's supposed to be presented. I don't know. But it's same thing with this. Like, you went with this like more narrow photograph, and it's still, all of them just fit so nicely into it. Like, I love that. I absolutely love that.
And this one is edited a little bit more because it's layered on, because his close up, because I only have 50 milliliter, and obviously I'm not gonna be able to get that depth with that lens on both characters. So it's going to be kind of that way. But that's what I really kind of wanted to show, is their endearing little adventure anyways. So yeah, but the long and narrow is actually kind of nice. I don't like to shoot vertical that very much, so it's kind of...
Sabrina just said, Scott's reasoning for using the borders was my reasoning for taking everything in a square for a long while. Yeah. No, Sabrina, I actually 100% get that too, because that's the other opposite. That's the other end of the spectrum, is like, well, if you're going to make me do this, then I'm going to do it on my terms. And that's what you did. And I think that, again, that's another great way of solving the problem, is like, hey, if you're going to make me do this, fine, but I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to let you make a decision where my photos are cropped. So that's works just as well. Because there are a lot of toy photographers who shoot in square, and they make that square work so well. I'm so bad at square. I really don't get it. I don't understand squares. They confuse me. I don't know why. The only time I shoot square is I don't know. I may have talked about this on the podcast before, but I shoot pinhole cameras. And if you don't know what a pinhole camera is, it's a film pinhole camera. It's a little wooden box. I wish I had it down here, because it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. It's a little wooden box with a hole in the front. And that's it. And it takes pictures. And that is a 6 centimeter by 6 centimeter square image. Again, I do that in square because I don't crop it. So I'm thinking in square from the beginning. I'm thinking about it as a square image, so I don't mind leaving that as is. But if I try to take a photo that I took and put it into a square, it never makes any sense. Like, it always seems wrong. And like, Sabrina, like, your photos make sense as a square. Like, when I see them, it's like, oh, that's how you frame a square. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. And then if I try to do the same thing, it's just like, what just happened? Like, that's ridiculous. It doesn't, like, where did that character even go? I just cropped him out. So
that's what, and then they're thinking too hard about the edges, and like, you're seeing more, so you want to take more, and then getting it in square. It almost takes a lot more patience and, I don't even know, even like resilience to take it in that square frame. And
I
like,
agree.
It's admirable to like keep going in that direction, and like really taking as stunning shots as Sabrina does with it, because it's like it's hard on your brain. It's not good for me.
Yeah, it's not good for me either. Like I said, that's like the last thing I want to be thinking about, is like the shape. So I'm always impressed that you can do that. I'm impressed by square shooters in general. I'm also impressed by panoramic shooters, people who focus on panoramics. What's that Tom? I can't think of his handle.
Tom Milton? Is that what his name is?
You know what? Yeah. He shoots all panoramic, and he doesn't just shoot panoramic. There are two, let me explain it. There are two types of panoramic shooters. There's people who shoot an image, and then they shoot an image, and then they're like, oh, this would look good in panoramic. Sure, that makes perfect sense. I get that. He doesn't. He shoots in, like, his vision feels panoramic, and like it's from edge to edge. It makes sense. Like it was supposed to be shot in that format. It's not just a square photo with a bunch of extra on the edges. It's like the whole thing just makes sense. Like it's all one picture. And yeah, I've always been impressed by panoramic shooters. I was not thinking I was going to be talking about panoramics, but there's a famous street photographer. Again, maybe I'll remember it at some point. I'll talk about it on another podcast. But there's a famous street photographer who used to shoot with a Hasselblad panoramic camera. That was what he used. The images were shot on film in panoramic. And that was a perfect example. He used the entire frame and it made sense from edge to edge. It was not just like, wow, what a pretty photo. I'm going to make it short and long. Like he intended for it to look like that. And that intention is what I think is really fascinating whenever it comes to a crop. It's, which is why I don't like Instagram making the decision. I like there to be intent. like Sabrina said, like, you make that choice. You make that choice to make it a square. Don't let them choose it. You do your crop the way you want it and add a border and, fight them. So there you go. There's my rage out.
You ready for your analysis? Because you're next.
Oh, I'm next. Oh, God. Here it comes. Oh, of course you picked that. Okay. Interesting.
Well,
yep.
You have to think, like, when I'm picking these images, and this is my kind of go-to for anybody who's been on the show or have watched it, I like to try to figure out images that you guys might think are your favorites as well, and not just something I admire, because the best kind of photos that I like to see is stuff that you guys really have like a connection to, because fight the crop.
Fight the crop. So metal.
So it's just one of those things, and I think Scott, that's why we have similar like outdoor styles, is that you pay attention to like the grass and everything around it as well as the figure. And I always wanted to tell you that your textures match. So like you find locations that work with the figure itself.
Yeah.
And so I think it's the way your eyes work.
Yeah.
And like you're seeing it and you're kind of like doing that for the mood. Eva's on.
Hey, Eva.
But it's just like the way you guide us to what you're trying to envision is really cool. And so I try to describe this because I think your connection to the Star Wars universe really is shown as warm, and you're nostalgic, and just how you built yourself as your own person coming from these characters. Just like, this is an awful example. But like Bakugo is my go-to thing when I'm like, I don't have an idea, but I love this character and I know I could tell a story and I know I could take a good photo of him. I think that's kind of like your genre with Star Wars.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I do. And I said it before, I think on this podcast. I've also said it when I talk to other people on other podcasts. I do not, and I'll say it again, I do not think Star Wars is the greatest movie of all time. I don't. I love it to death. It is not the greatest movie of all time. But I will repeat, it is my favorite movie of all time. And I think that's where the connection comes from. I think, for me, Star Wars was what I moved into in my, like, preteen. Like, it was just as I was evolving from, like dinosaurs, like when I was into dinosaurs and stuff like that. It was my gateway kind of into, I don't mean, it's going to sound cheesy, but almost into like adulthood. Like it was a more adult version of myself. It was me growing up a little bit. And even though I kind of stepped back from it a little bit in my real adult years, I still always loved it. I still watch Star Wars multiple times a year. I'm not saying I sit there and like watch it like on the screen like perfectly, but like, I mean, I put a Star Wars movie on at some point, probably every week. There's like some sort of like Star Wars movie playing, whether it's like, towards the end of the day, if I'm doing something, if I'm washing dishes, if I'm doing laundry, like whatever the case is. The kids are asleep, whatever it is. Because yeah, I bond with it. It's a memory I have. I've always gotten very, no matter what my interests were. And this is starting from toddlerhood. I mean, like this is old, like little tiny Scott. I've always had a very obsessive personality when it came to an interest. If I've had an interest, I wanted to know as much as I could about that thing. When I was into dinosaurs as a kid, I wanted to know everything I could possibly know about dinosaurs for my age. Like I wanted to understand everything. And it was the same thing when Star Wars came along into my life, because it was such a big universe and there was so much opportunity to learn about it. It was like it was a drug for me. I mean, that was my ideal situation. Like you've got books, you've got comics, you've got like, different types of informative story like books that like give you breakdowns. Of course I was going to fall into that. I was going to fall
Yeah.
into that trap. And as much as I love other sci-fi things, Star Wars was just so much bigger. There was so much more opportunity to absorb characters who don't matter, and like that was fun. So yeah, I think that is why I gravitated towards Star Wars. And as much as I still I love Marvel comics, and I do embrace a few DC things and stuff like that, but yeah, I think I'm always going to bond best with these figures, more so than something I'll shoot of like a Marvel Legend or something like that. It shows in a photo when you really love the thing that you're taking pictures of. So
Yeah. And I think it goes back to your portrait photography too. When you take pictures of your kids, it really shines through for them and like what's going on, and
absolutely,
just like being able to embrace it. And I think that's part of the reason why I like this hobby so much, is being able to see what other people really, really enjoy and how they're going to portray that. And that's what the images really count.
yeah,
I always like get asked the question like, what's the most important piece to a toy photo? And I really think it's the intent of what you're taking the photo for,
a
and
hundred
who,
percent.
what, and what's going on.
Well, a
And
good
the same
example
way.
of that is Lobster, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Like a toy photographer who is shooting something very different than most people are shooting right now,
Mhm.
or the pirate spoils, like his love of film and cars. Like you can see it in their work. Like it's very clear when Lobster shoots
Yeah.
a cowboy photo. He loves that old western like feel. It's what he loves. It's what he bonds with. Yes, he could take a Star Wars figure and take a nice photo of it, but the connection is not as much there. Like he doesn't love it to the same degree. And it might end up looking more like a western, which is great
Yeah.
too. Like that was the funny thing about when I did his photos, was that I picked a Marvel character that I loved to do a cowboy kind of feel to it, like that kind of like rogue, like on his own,
Mhm.
in order to better bond with the character. If I had taken a bunch of cowboy figures out, I don't know if the effect would have been there. So it's
He Patrick is like one of a kind. And a lot of his
yes.
stuff now too is just like it's
Huh.
pinpointed focal points on characters. He's got a lot going on like the, I don't even know how to express it, but when color stretches, like the spectrum of it is like the coolest thing. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Hmm.
So, this one's I think inside.
Yeah,
So
it
a
is.
lot of your thing, but I had to showcase your eclectic love for reusing and like basically finding the good in everything. So you don't realize that this is probably part of your personality, but
Hmm.
you really, really, really like enjoy objects that are kind of don't have a home. You're almost
I
like the
do.
aisle of misfit pets for like merchandise, but also like on our entire year of toy photo stuff, you found little hints and bits and stuff that really people really enjoyed about your breakdowns,
Yeah.
because you always see the good in everything. So
I try to.
yeah, so I
Yeah.
have to like give you a lot of praise, because it's funny to me that you're like, oh, I need 18 of these like nuts and bolts, because sometime I will find something to do with these because someone needs to like them. So
Yeah.
it's kind of that. And also your photos go from like dramatic, like you really showcase the figure itself, but also the emotion that you believe this figure is having at that time. And so this lighting was like my tonal purpose for you.
This was fun. This photo, like, yeah. So the background is So at my job, there are these like where we store like the laptops for the associates to use. That's a door panel from it because it fell apart. So I took the door off and brought it home. The shiny thing on the side that he's kind of looking at is like a little mini desktop trash can. And then the little piece that he's sitting on, I I've talked about him a lot. My very close colleague Scott, his name is also Scott. We work together like this. Has always been really good at collecting pieces from broken machinery and stuff. So this was like a fried board or like some sort of circuit connector or something or other. And he just like put it on my desk for me. It was like, I think you'll like this. And yes, I did. I used it. But yeah, it is something that I love. I love using stuff that's going to be thrown out. And it's not even 100% like an environmentalist thing, but giving something a second chance. There's something fun to that. Like you get these pieces of garbage that people are throwing out, and it's like, if I can use it for something and at least one more time, give it at least one more shot. And most of this stuff I use multiple times. That panel in the back has been used in multiple shots. But if I can use it a few more times, like I try to, because there's something there. And as much respect as I have for dial makers, like I'm always blown away by what they can make. I'm just not. I don't think I have the patience, and I'd rather just find trash and reuse it. I've made a handful of dio type things, but really when I have the most fun is when I'm just like finding garbage and stuff like that. It's kind of weird, but I guess I enjoy it. So.
And I don't think you realize too, because like the light, how it's falling on this figure is really the highlights that you do, even when there's natural light falling on it.
Yeah.
You really, really like express the edges of like everything, and your emotion is just perfect. So that's the thing is like you're a very emotional photographer.
I try to be an emotional photographer.
Yeah.
I'm an emotional person. So.
Speaking of, this next one really doesn't have much toy photography in it.
Oh God.
But I had to choose it because it's a little bit different.
Oh yeah.
Biggest it was really nice to see on your feed, because one of the biggest things about you, Scott, is your family and how much you enjoy them and showcase what they want. But also shopping with Elliot has been like the highlights of this podcast and going through everything and some kind of memories. So
yeah, this was fun. This was for who did I do this for?
Amy.
Amy, because Amy does feature herself a bit on her page. And I realized that I don't really do that. I don't feature myself at all. Like I very rarely, I'll post something on my story or something periodically, but as far as like actually showing me, it's a very, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not one of the people who wants to hide, but I've just never really done it. And so when the opportunity came to do her style of, which we can talk about. I want to talk about this a little bit in a little while, but one of the things in the style of that I really wanted to do, which every once in a while a photographer came along that made me really think about it, and Amy was one of them, was not necessarily is their feed about their photographic style, or is it what they portray as an experience? And I did that with her, and I also felt a real need to do that with Jason. A little bit with Amy, Cattycombs Amy.
Yeah.
There was this, you realize that, yes, there's lots of great photographers out there. There's tons of great photographers out there. But sometimes it's also about presenting a certain thing. Like, this isn't the way that she used to take her selfies. This is not how she's taken her photos with her toys. But what I decided to do was take this image and photograph myself with the toy the way I would want to be photographed with the toy, the way she chooses to be. She chooses to be photographed with a toy the way she wants to represent herself. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. I could just do an image of myself, almost like mirroring how she does it. But is that really capturing the essence of who she is as a creator, as a content creator? So my thought, like you said, what's important to me, like this guy, and this was taken before Owen was even born. So this is the center of everything. This is my Elliot. This is my unfailing, perfect little monster. And I was like, well, he's got to be in it with me. And I remember trying to figure out how to do that, because I was thinking, how do I want to be represented? If I'm going to have a photo of myself with a toy, what do I need in addition to that to really make it me? And it's him. I mean, he's mean, he's part of the reason why I even started doing this.
Yeah,
Honestly, like
it's in your caption.
yeah, I don't. Had he not been born, I don't know if I ever would have done this. I don't know if I would have gotten into toy photography. I had gotten very content just sort of like being an adult and just kind of like just living life, making money, doing my job, living in a house, blah, blah, blah. Not content, but maybe just like, like it was what it was. And then he showed up, and you start thinking to yourself, like, well, what do I want him? How do I want him to see me? Like, what do I want him to see? I don't want him to just see some guy who just like goes to work, comes home, hangs out, goes to work, comes home, and hangs out. I want him to see like that you can have fun and you can be creative. And I hope that I just made this comment this morning in front of my wife. I hope that he finds a way to be creative professionally and doesn't get any sort of like jaded like I've gotten in past like artistic experiences. I really would support that 100%. I'm not so jaded on art that I wouldn't want him to try it out. I would 150% support him if he decided like I want to try being an actor. Be like, oh, okay, well, whatever, good luck, go do what you got to do. And I think that's, he woke that up in me a little bit, because I think it's easy to forget. I did not have him as early as some people have kids. I was in my 30s when I had my first child, and I think he came at the right time. I think he was a big wake up call. So having him in here with with BB-8 of all characters, who I think he's a little bit like BB-8 to a degree, a little sassy and a little bit of a pain in the ass, but like I think he's just I think that was exactly what this photo needed to be. So I'm happy you picked it, because it really does. That's funny that this photo does mean a lot to me. I've actually been thinking about printing it up and putting it somewhere on the wall or something.
You should. I think it's great. It's like everything. It's amazing. You worded that, articulated that awesome, and you got your bourbon going.
I do. I got my bourbon. Oh, and for the record, if anybody's curious, Angel's Envy. This is the end of it. I'm finishing it up today. It is one of the greatest bourbons ever, in my opinion. Definitely top 10. Definitely top 10. For those of you who don't know, I love whiskey of all kinds. I like rye, scotch, bourbon, whatever. But Angel's Envy it's a monster. It's a good one. It's like really tastes good. So just little advice for you guys.
All right. I need whiskey for this next one. I put these in order that you sent them to me too. So you
good.
Are just,
good. All right. This photo, for me, when I look at it, and I looked at it, I looked through your feed multiple times when I was trying to pick out 3 images. This represents a very specific thing that you do. This, for me, is two of your primary characteristics. The musical notes. I know that sounds really weird. I know that's like people are like, what the, why? Musical notes. That is the essence of what you do. You just try stuff. You don't give a crap. You're just like, I'm going to do this. I think you might have even said that when I commented on the musical notes, like, I think you literally said, I want to look back at the comment, but something along the lines of like, yeah, I just kind of thought that would be a fun thing to put in there. And you did it. And that is what you do that I'm always very envious of. I am really, really, really bad at like just saying, I'm going to try this and see what happens. You are just like, you're like, yeah, whatever, who cares? Like, I'm just going to stick these on there. And it's like, it's perfect. That is so you. Like, you do that. Like, you had that other series where you had the comic book, like, booms and things and whatnot with the little characters. Like, you're willing to just give something a go, like, no matter what. Like, it could be the coolest thing or the dumbest thing. Not that this is either. I'm just saying, like, it could be either or, but you're willing to just go for it. And because of that, because of the way you present it, 98% of the time, it works perfectly because of that. And I remember, so I'm going to compare you right now to Victor Wooten. You're going to be the Victor Wooten of toy photography. For those of you who don't know who Victor Wooten is probably one of the greatest funk bass players of all
Oh.
time. He is unbelievable. He is if you're into that kind of music, I'm not saying you're going to like it if you're not into it, but if you're into that, Victor Wooten, genius. Anyway, Victor Wooten, I was watching a video one time of him, and it was brilliant because what he did was he said to this guitar player, he was talking about the groove and the feel and the way you present yourself. And he said, I can guarantee you that I can groove so hard in the wrong key that you're trying to play in that I will make you look wrong. And the guy was like, okay, let's do it. And so he did it. And the guy's playing like this like guitar like riff, like going for it. And Victor Wooten starts playing like this crazy like funk bass line that's just like perfect and like well seated and everything. And it was hilarious. Like he genuinely made the guitar player look like he was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The point of that, what I mean here is that's exactly what you do with your photos. You take these images of toy photographs and you're willing to experiment to the point where you do it in, whether you actually mean to or not, you do it in such a confident way that every single image you present looks correct and looks like it was meant to be that way. Like I've never seen a photo on your feed where I went like, did she mean to do that? That's a little like, I don't understand what's going on here. And I think that's what's just so cool. No matter what you try, you always just put it out there in a very clear, smart, well-executed way where like nobody can question it. And I think that's what, like for me, that's what these little notes represented. Now, beyond the notes, that was just a little side. That was the side part. The bigger part is for me the essence of your imagery. I wanted to pick an image that really connected to the way that you tend to present your photos with that little spike on there. So the spike, we've talked about it. Take it, get rid of it. Okay. Now the image, we just take the notes out for a second. Your use of lighting in organic settings, you make the character pop. And you make the character stand out against anything else that's going on here. Like, nothing else matters. Like, it's all part of the presentation. But whereas I tend to blend my characters sort of into the landscape, your characters always stand out against it, no matter what. No matter, like, even when you use more natural lighting, you're very good at taking the character, making them the prominent piece. And the stuff around the edges is just enhancements. And I think that's something you've always done with Nendos. You do it with all kinds of figures, but especially with Nendos, you get their eyes, you get their facial expression, you get the lights off of their hair. You get all of those pieces that make the character pop out against whatever you're photographing it against. You obviously, this is a photo using organic vegetation. That's the epitome of you. Whether it's literally organic or not, it's that leafy feel. And you even have a piece of Dio-ish stuff in there. This, to me, I think that the reason why this photo grabbed me is because I feel like it hits a lot of your main points. And out of the 3 photos that I sent, this is the one that I felt like kind of rounds out your style and connects all the dots together. You know, whether people agree with that or not, that's up to them. But I feel like it hits all of your major elements on your feed. And then, yeah, so there you go. There's your summary of that photograph.
That's perfect. No, this is one of my favorite ones I've ever taken too, because I actually I have the manga for this and I haven't seen the anime because there is one, but this figure is a ballroom dancer. That's like his thing. And so when I got him, I was like, "You're not articulated whatsoever. How are you going to do ballroom dance?"
Mm-hmm.
And so, but his facial expressions are perfect. And I think one of the things that, like, even from Amy's episode or other people that shoot Nendroids understand that their noses will Sabrina. The puns
Ding, ding.
are strong today.
Such good puns.
I know, it does hit all the right notes. Their noses will go away. And I think we talked about this when we
did talk about this when I tried photographing Nendos for the first time. Good God, their noses.
Lighting a Nendroid is it's it's a practice. As we can see, I was not good at it before. The first image I showed you earlier, her face is basically whited out. And really going from them being just, hey, this is a collectible and I'm gonna throw it in a bush and take a picture and like do my thing, to actually like thinking about what I want to like portray as, like, again, the emotional impact of this, of what I'm just gonna throw on my feed. This for me was just something fun and musical, and I liked the figure, so I'm gonna do this. This is the bridge part from my Terraformer Graham's bridge that
Mm-hmm.
he built for me, and he made it so that I could break it down so I could take it with me. That was when I asked for custom dios. I don't want to bring them inside too much. That being said, he is right now making me one for indoors because it's
Of
going to be
course.
pouring. So it's gonna be one of those things that I want to explore down the road. But you're right. I like a natural environment. I like the figure to be prominent, and I like to just kind of showcase how cool these little guys are.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of my thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Going to the next one here in a second. I gotta scroll down.
Da-da. I forget what the second one was. That's the second one. Oh, okay. Influence of figures. I do not feel that I am as heavily influenced because, and I think part of it is because I tend to do the same crap over and over again. I feel like a new figure can completely change your feed for a period of time. It's still you, but a new figure can 100% shift the tone of your the way you present. And I think that this figure, I remember when you got it. Like, I remember when he showed up. Like, that's how much of an influence it had on your the way you were presenting and the way you were creating your images. And I love the fact that I sort of already stepped on that part, but I'm going to continue with it. The fact that you still kept true to kind of what your way of presenting is. As much as it evolved a little bit, like your side light got a little bit more aggressive to create that kind of darker, like, not horror, but that old world feel, that old horror feel. But you kept it light. Like, you still got like the bokeh in the back, and you still got the greenery on the sides and stuff. Which is, everybody else, when they got this figure, they went full, like, castle, dark dungeon, the whole shebang, stone, dripping walls, everything you would expect. But you didn't. You still went darker. Like, you look at the top of him and he kind of disappears. Like, you look at like his back, it fades out, and the top of his head fades out. And it's like that kind of strong lighting on his face. But he's in like a gnome garden. Like, it's amazing. Like, I just, no one did that. Nobody. Like, this is very unique to you. And so I think what this photograph represented for me, like I said, for your style specifically, was the idea of being influenced by your new figures and being excited about your new figures, but not losing your style of presentation, and keeping, and everybody knows I'm a little too obsessed about that, but again, nothing wrong with people who want to just go all over the place. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's fun to have a signature, like a visual signature. It's really fun. Like, Steph and I, we do not watermark our photos. So there's something really fun about knowing that chances are, if people see it, they know kind of real quick who took it. And I think that's what this photo kind of represents. Is, even though like this photo came out, and I remember the him blowing up my feed, like he was all over the place, because everybody got their pre-orders at like the same time and whatnot. But yours went in a different direction from what everyone else was doing, and I think that's a really good example here. I love the way that lantern is lit. You've got the little bit of smoky mist over on the side. His front is, his eye sockets are, you've got the shadowing in the eye sockets, like kind of giving him that darkness. But again, there's this sense of kind of this positive energy going around in the background, even though he's like a darker character. So that was why this one I felt was really important to your style.
I think as far as like, I was collecting Nendroids for Newnich primarily, and this pretty much brought me back into a different type of figure. Nosferatu kind of like set that for me on what to expect, because it's a mezco, and so the soft goods and like the movability and the accessories and everything else that came into it. This is just indoors. It's on a piece of. I have like a glass
Mhm.
shelf that I use so I can light up,
Yep.
and through in the bottom of it, and I was just like, he needs some happier days than just all the gloom. So
Yeah.
that was kind of like, what would he do like when he wasn't in that movie? Like he probably had a life before and after, or well, not after, but like before it. So it's just kind of like,
Yeah.
and what does that look like? And so I'm sure he was just kind of exploring and doing his own thing around where he was at. So
Absolutely.
it's just interesting that figures can be taken all over the place. There's some
Oh
like
gosh, yeah.
crazy cool things that people did with him, and then I was just like, I'm gonna take him out into the forest and see what I can
Yeah.
do. So this is great
Absolutely.
work.
And you did,
Yeah.
and it was perfect. And so yeah, I think that's definitely 100% my feelings on this guy and what you did with him. So the next
We'll
one
see.
is similar reasoning, but there's more to it. So this is just so while with your Nendos. Now I have to ask because I'm not 100% sure. Did you use lights on this one?
No, I couldn't get them. This is straight just on the
Straight
board.
natural light. Okay, I was pretty sure of that. So the point I was going to make, I'm happy you said that because otherwise this would have very much scratched this. um, the the fact that you do use, um, you know, filler like LEDs and stuff like that when you're outside to really make those characters stand out against. You're able to darken your background significantly more than like someone like me who doesn't like the figure. It gives it like and I mean this in a good way, not in a bad way. It gives it like a less natural look. It makes it
Hmm.
look more like a comic book or like a you're presenting it in like an anime way. Um, but this photo to me is just proof of what you can do even in natural light. The fact that like you know how to find that light, you know how to make that light work, even if you don't have your artificial lights with you. You're still able to make him pop out against the background. He doesn't disappear into it. You put him in a great space. You're still using outdoor environments. Um, I think there's something really cool about that, and it, this image just got me. And again, talking about you and your influence, how you're influenced by new figures and new ideas. Like, you don't stick to a particular universe. Even within your Nendos, you don't stick into it. Like stick very strongly into Star Wars, but like this, you see a character you like, you want to take photos of it, you get it, the end. And this is what this is. This is you got a character because you were inspired by it, and you were like, let's try it, and you got unbelievable results. And I think that is really this photo because of that. Going back to one of the first things I said about how you're not afraid to just like experiment, this is the essence of you not being afraid to experiment. Like you just threw this figure in there, you went for it, you came up with an image that you wanted to create, you created the image, and you posted it, and you said, there you go, what do you guys think? Like, and I just think that's just awesome. It's such a cool thing. It's so important. And this has always been this photo on your feed has always kind of stuck with me a little bit since you posted it. I really really love it. Love the image. I love how much you see the definition of the figure against the darker
Hmm.
background. I love the fact that he even stands out against the foreground, which is not always easy, depending on the tones, especially when you use organic tones. Organic tones can sometimes make your figure kind of fade into your, like if you go back to like my Boba Fett photos from the lake that I was at up in upstate New York, he kind of becomes sort of part of the scene rather than really stepping out in front of it, even though they're like completely, miles apart from each other. You got the mountains behind him and you got Boba Fett in the front. He can kind of blend in and sort of becomes like part of the mountains. This character doesn't. It's very similar colors, very similar tone, very similar color scheme. But yet everything that you see of the character and props and everything it steps forward from even the foreground that's, lives in the same timbre. So it's so there you go, and there's your third image of how you present yourself. So
Well, I'm gonna tell you that you helped with this year, because can you tell that I put the space from the very top of his little antenna there? There's like the smallest piece of space. I was like, when I was
love
framing
it.
it, I was like kneeling in a creek while I was doing this.
Mhm.
Like, I gotta get that tiny and still get as much as I can for what I wanted.
Isn't it so funny how you start seeing stuff like that? The more you talk about it, the more you observe it.
Mm-hmm.
This is People talk about like what's the benefit of art school. Like you're either a good artist or you're not, right? Like that's the logic at the end of the day. Is why does anyone need to get a degree in art? My counter argument is not that you need a degree in art, but you need to surround yourself with people who create art. If you are a creative person, but you live in your own space and you're creating your own stuff in your own space and you're not ever leaving that artistic bubble, you don't have opportunity to try things and like think about little things like that. Not that this is an earth-shattering difference, but like little things like that can be really fun. That's one of the greatest things about doing this in the style of that we've been doing. All of these things makes you recognize things that people do that you want to try yourself, things you want to experiment with. If you're just creating and creating and creating, but you don't like look at anybody else's work and you don't take in any other ideas and you don't listen to other people's thoughts, like what is the point? Like, I don't care if you're the greatest artist in the world. I don't care if you are a legend. I don't care if there are books written about you. If you are not learning from other people around you, I was about to say a bad word. You done screwed up. Like, you done screwed up. Because if that is not, you don't want to get to that point. You never ever want to be the smartest person in the room, and you never ever want to be the most like creative person in the room. Ever. That's a terrible space to be in. If you ever find yourself in that space, get the hell out of that space, because that you have nowhere to go. You have nothing to benefit. Like, so again, not that I have all the best ideas in the world, but a little thing like that made you try this. Well, the fact that I tried and I'm going to continue trying using LED lights, that's huge. I didn't want to use LED lights. When I started this, I was like, I'm not using lights ever. I'm doing everything outside, all natural. All natural. But now that I've spent time with you and like learned from you, I want to do that. I want to try this. I want to start like incorporating something a little different into my vibe. And that's so important. It's so important. Surround yourself by creative people. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to I'm not saying you have to go to art school, but be around artists. Like, you don't know best. I guarantee you. That's all I can guarantee for anybody listening. You don't know best. You have great ideas, and you might have some of the best ideas within a particular space, but there's other space out there to grow into, and that's really important.
I think that was why it was so fun too, getting to know all these different types of vibes.
Yes.
Like, and I'll go back to Lord of Thane's episode. I did not know what I was getting into, and it was probably the most fun. So it's just like, oh my goodness.
Shut up, Eva. You don't get to talk. Get back. Get out of here.
Yeah. But it's just like getting to know everybody and like how they shoot and what they like and what their art form is. It's like, it's the coolest thing. Absolutely. We spent a whole year where we were supposed to be isolated from each other, and we got to have some fun. So it was it's nice.
Absolutely. Lord of Thanes, that's a perfect example. Like, that is, talk about somebody who stretched me a lot. Like, we can get into that a little bit more. I was going to actually ask you. Actually, let me just add. I have a few questions, so I'm going to throw one out at you right now.
Oh, I hate your surprise questions.
This is going to be fun though. Who is the artist that you spent the most to recreate their style?
You know what's funny? Do you want to know the real one?
Who?
It was MJ. We did it on our damn cell phones, and I couldn't figure out how to work it. And so it was like, I was supposed to spend like 2 hours in the garage. But then next was, God, God, the doll junkie, because that damn Barbie would not balance, and so
Yeah.
I spent so much time doing that
So
one.
how about money though?
Oh,
Who'd you spend
oh,
the most money on? I'm
oh
asking this
God.
specifically because I'm going to talk about Lord of Thane for a second.
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, I'm trying to go back through because we had like 25 of them, didn't
I
we?
know, I
Um,
know. Like, did you? Here's a question. Let's start with this. Did you buy any figures specifically for people's shoots, other than me? Like, don't take me into consideration. I'm talking about just like in general. Are there any shoots that you did that you actually bought a figure for?
yes, I bought one. I bought one for Lord of Thanes, but it was the Micro Machine. The little I don't know what it is. The Star Wars guy with the ram horns.
Yeah, yeah. The Banthas.
Bantha. Thank you.
You got it. I
Yeah,
got you.
but I think when I bought the Barbie, that Barbie was about $100 because she was Lord of the Rings, and so I spent $100 on that image. But I don't regret it. It was fun and like enjoyable.
No, that's
But
exactly what I was going to say. So, like, the reason I asked the question is because Lord of Thane was definitely the one that I spent the most money and probably time on. Um, I'm not going to get into it too deep, but I
Mhm.
did buy, like, I bought a lot of random stuff to try to make that dio work because I had never really made dios before. Like, I was buying different types of paint. I actually bought like an entire LED lighting kit. Like, I bought like all kinds of things related to that. I was buying foam. I was buying molding. I was like the weirdest stuff I was buying to try this out.
Mhm.
And so, like, again, I'm not bothered. I want to preface this is not a negative at all. It's just funny. That's definitely the one I think I spent the most money on because I was literally buying like pieces. No, that's not so good. Let's try this instead. It took me like 2 weeks to kind of get that silly little dio together. Meanwhile, he just makes them like casually out of like whatever he can find. And I'm sitting there trying to like, oh no, I need to do this. I need to do this. He's probably, if he knew, if he saw like the receipts from like Home Depot, he'd just be like, what is wrong with you? You need a life. um, but it's so funny. Like going back to that, just like, getting to try new things. I think that
Mhm.
was what I wanted to get to with that was, it's fun. It's fun, and no, it's not about how much money you spend.
No, not at
Steph and I
all.
can we're just stupid sometimes, but like it's just about trying different things, and I harp on it. I've harped on it for 2 seasons now. Just give yourself a chance to try something a little different. I'm not saying you need to completely get out of your box. Just try. Just see what's out there. Test the waters. If you're an indoor shooter, go outside. If you're specifically a camera shooter, try shooting with your phone once. See what
Yeah.
happens. I tried it. It was weird. It was real weird. Other than the micro machines, I hadn't done any phone photos, and that was what I did with MJ. I
Oh
was like,
man.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I committed. I said I'm gonna do this, and I remember looking like the first round of photos were awful, like literally awful, and I had to go redo them because they were. I was so disappointed in how they came out, and I'm still not like oh my gosh, these are the best photos I ever took. But like, I they were bad the first round. I don't even know. I think I might have deleted all of them, but I tried. I set them up on like a little tripod, and I had like little lights and stuff. I did it. And it was just terrible. But it's important. You gotta make mistakes like that. You gotta if you don't try those things, you're not gonna grow at all. You're just gonna be stuck. So
It's funny too because like you want to make sure that when we captured them, this is the funny part is that we wanted to make sure we did them justice, and we're
oh yeah,
sitting there it's just like, oh, some of those shoots were definitely challenging because it's like I don't think in this format,
right.
and it's so artistic that you don't want to interrupt how they actually did things. But
Uh huh.
oh my gosh,
Well, now you
so
just do
bravo to you all.
before we even move on to the next one, I'm going to throw another question at you
Oh
because of
my
the fact that
goodness.
because you just brought this up. If you had, what would be, in your opinion, over the last, since we started doing this in the style of, what would be the artist that you think that you felt really confident with, that you really felt like you took a photo that you wanted, or a style you accomplished what you had hoped to accomplish with?
This one's an easy one. That's Dana because I've known Dana for a long time, and it's easier almost to shoot things in a style of people that you really like either know for a longer time but really connect with on like our collecting habits too, because
Mm-hmm.
she's an Android collector, she's a Pokemon collector. She like I know her well enough that taking stuff in her style made me feel comfortable. And that
Oh
was
yeah.
probably the only episode where I was like, I'm going to show you this and I know you're going to like it, because the rest of the time I'm like, oh my god, let's see if this
What's gonna
works.
happen? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
And
interesting.
yeah, that and Emma, because Emma's again, I she's one of my
Yeah.
inspirations, and I just adore her. So it was kind of like kind of different,
Yeah. Emma
but
Emma was I felt the most at home shooting like her. I felt like it was the she is the most similar to my style too. I felt
mhm.
like I didn't have to stretch myself terribly. I did think a little bit outside the box, but as a whole I felt like I kind of just fell right into that. Um but I will tell you, Stefan,
Mhm.
S Gink underscore labs. Is that right?
Mhm.
He shooting that photo of Groot dragging the stormtrooper and going outside the box a little bit for me. I hadn't really done a mashup like that before. Was that felt real good? That felt real good. I've said it. I said it on the podcast, and I still think I'm going to stick true to it. That might be one of my favorite photos I've ever taken.
Mhm.
And it was only because of his vibe, the way he does things, the way he does mashups, and the fact that it was a combination. It was stretching me in some ways. He's typically an outdoor shooter and shoots in natural environments, so I had like that comfort zone. But on the other end, I wanted to do a hybrid mashup because that is so key to what he creates. Is this feeling of, I think I talked about it on the podcast, is he takes characters and he puts them together, but not in a
Mhm.
funny way. He puts them together in a sense like they feel like, yeah, these characters live in the same universe. And so that was still, looking back on it, was a big one for me. I really look fondly on that shoot, and I thought long and hard about it, and it still feels good. I still
Yeah.
have like looked back on it and said like, yeah, I feel good about this. This is a good one. So,
We had a lot of good ones, because I think it was like Amy Cattycombs was
oh,
comfortable for me too. To live in
see,
that
that wasn't
headspace.
comfortable for me. I went
Yeah.
outside of my comfort zone for her.
Yeah.
Amy was. There were a lot of elements that I used. I remember I used my Star Wars book. I tried a few weeks before I took her photos, because I knew I was going to be taking her photos. I tried shooting a little bit with a book just to see how it felt like to shoot with a paper backdrop.
Mhm.
And so there were so many elements. I was using natural light, but yet I was using props on a table. And then I had to I did, because I wanted to do her style, did it behind the scenes. So like everything felt a little weird. I was happy with the results, but it stretched me. That was a
Mhm.
little bit out of my typical vibe. So,
Yeah.
but Amy was a good one.
Yeah, and Flames figures I think was comfortable for me, just because we live in that shonen anime world together.
Oh
So
man.
yeah,
Oh no,
so
that was
his
that was a stretch. He was a stretch for me. He was that was out of my, like, even just the whole like graphic design element and stuff like that, like throwing
Mhm.
together a silly little um I say silly for me, not for him. He makes it look much better, but like a
Yeah,
like a
his
little
face
just like the
massive.
way to present it, like I wanted
Yeah.
to do that so badly. I felt like it was so important, but that's not my forte by any means. He's a different shooter than I am.
Mhm.
But again, this goes back to what I talked about with making sure that I wasn't always focused on just the way that people photograph.
Mhm.
As much as that is important, um, I'll go back to Jason. Jason was one of the ones where I really, it was a, Scott, wake up, like you're not approaching this correctly. Um, that was the one that I scratched. I had a whole shoot done. I had all 3 photos done. I had them on the computer, and I went, "This is." I totally missed the boat on this, and I went back and did something completely different, because Jason. It was so important, I think, to present him, to represent, similar to the way I felt about Amy, representing yourself and presenting
Mhm.
yourself in the way that you would want to be presented, because that's something so important about what Jason does. Like, yes, he's a great photographer. That's not even a debate here. He is a fantastic photographer,
Mhm.
but it's more than just the fact that he's a photographer. It's his whole it's the brand, and again, not saying brand in a negative like a Walgreens brand. I'm saying it like in the way that he represents himself, and that's why I went like I just stopped. I was like, no, this is totally wrong. I was doing stuff with like digital backdrops, and I was like, okay, yeah, I got his like look, the way he takes photos, and I went, no, this is not him though. This isn't what we're trying to do here. This isn't a style thing. This is just the way he takes photos, and that was when I like kind of went back to the drawing board, and I took a photo of me with a figure in front of like my F-Stop Rebel shirt, and then I did took a photo of the shell that Rachel had made me, because that was part of the brand, and like because that's more my brand is not like, I'm not trying to necessarily make a professional brand, but like I do, that is a big thing for me. The fact that Rachel took the time to make that shell for me is that for me is part of what I want out of this. That's what I want out of this experience. And so it only made sense that I incorporated something like that into my, I don't want to make money off of this. We've talked about this. That's not necessarily a dream of mine. If we were able to do this professionally, I don't know, it'd be fun. Like we could figure it out and make it work. But like again, on our own terms. Like the little things are really special to me. And that shell, I mean, it still lives on my table.
Yeah.
Like I know it sounds odd to some people, but yeah, exactly. Like that's special to me. That represents my brand. The fact that somebody that I met in this community took the time to make something for me with my logo and my thing on it is that special. So yeah, going back to the drawing board again. Things to think about. Like when you're thinking about people's styles. Here comes Scott with his lectures again. Like when you're thinking about people's styles, don't always think just about their photography. Think about what they're representing. And this goes with any type of art, any type of creation, anything you're making. Like, and you see something that you like. Think about the bigger picture. Like, look at them as a whole. Like, what are they doing as a person? What are some other elements that you can grab? Like, just because you're shooting photographs in someone's style doesn't mean you're really capturing like their essence. Like, just because you're photographing like them doesn't necessarily mean you're capturing them. So I don't know. There you go. There's my bourbon soapbox.
Your bourbon soapbox. All right, let's get to our end of styles up, because these were.
Oh God, here we go.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't. I put it over top of the border too. Great.
That's all right. You can see it. It's fine.
Yeah.
This was it. I will say it. Such a blast. This was this really took me. This gave me a chance to really try something. Just like some of the other photographers this year, this really gave me an opportunity to do something that was not at all in my wheelhouse. Like this was photographed in the afternoon. This was not like evening. This is not evening light. This was me using lights to create a darker background with a brighter foreground and attempting to make the figure stand out. So there you go. There's my Steph attempt right there. There were two other ones, but this is the one that I feel most. This was the one that felt the most right. Oh, and potato flakes, which I actually tagged Idahoan Foods or whatever. I had to. They haven't responded yet. I don't think they will. But like, it was hilarious because they only have like 8,000 followers or something. I'm like, who follows potato flakes on Instagram? So I had to. I tagged them 3 times. All 3. I had to. So there's that.
They're probably like, what is going on?
You're like, why is this guy tagging me?
Yeah.
Idahoan Potatoes, if you're listening to this, sponsor me. 73 potato flakes.
If we get sponsored by potato flakes, then we'll think it'd be ridiculous. That bourbon.
We've made it. We've made it. Potato flakes.
Did you find it hard capturing the actual potato flakes, like where you wanted them?
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
You wanted them to be?
Absolutely, and it's funny you say that. I will say this about myself, and I'm gonna pull back on how confident I was with this photo. So let's rewind and talk about things I didn't like about this photo. One of the things I noticed with some of your like more aggressive potato flaking, shall we say, we'll make it a verb. Your potato flaking is you tended to keep the potato flakes behind the character. I did not. I literally put them in my hands and held and just went and just like fired it off as much as I could. So they were just going everywhere. They were all over my camera, like all over my camera, on the lens, in things, like they're just covered, like absolutely covered. And my poor camera is barely weatherproofed at this point because I dropped it. So it was just like there were just potato flakes everywhere. And I'm just blowing these potato flakes all over the place. And not until I got home, because there were a few images that I actually liked better than this, but they were just so like the potato flakes were like right in her face and like all over the porgs, and it was just like potato flakes everywhere. I was just like, this is garbage. But if I could go back and do it again, that is something I would do. I would take my shutter release and I would go around the side of her and kind of blow them towards the back and let them sort of fall behind her just to give the effect, and not necessarily let it fall in front of her eyes and stuff like that. Like I actually did edit a few like out of her forehead. There were some like right on her forehead. I kept some of it just to keep it like at least somewhat natural. But there was like one right in her eyeball, like literally like right in the middle of her. I was like, oh, I guess I gotta get rid of this. But yeah, the potato flakes that was an adventure. I really haven't done that. I've done like flour, but that's more of a like a textural effect. It's not really as much to represent snow as it is to kind of represent like a blizzard and wind and stuff like that. The potato flakes, you want to get those actual like individual spots everywhere. So that was fun. That was a different one, but yeah, there you go. There's the potato flake experience.
No,
go try some potato flakes.
You got her nose.
Barely, just barely, but there's some nose there, so a little bit of nose. But yeah, Nendo noses are a pain in the butt.
They are. Their whole like, because their faceplates are so expressive, you want to get every piece of it.
Oh yeah,
and then just like they'll disappear, make her eyeballs in a mouth.
Yep.
All right, here is mine.
Oh my god, I loved this. Firstly, I loved that you went Star Wars.
Of course.
And then secondly, I just love the lighting here. Like this is, so just to give you even more context, when it comes to this, I don't even know if you realize how me this is. We used to backlight like crazy when I used to do like band photo shoots and like musician photos and stuff in Nashville. Like I used to tear up the backlight. So this was, when I saw it, my head exploded because I was like, oh my god, she's in my brain. That was a big thing for me. I used to try to get like lens flare and stuff, because to be honest, that was kind of in back then. Like there were a few artists who were really like their album covers had like lens flare and stuff like that. So when I saw this, I was like, oh my god, this is so solid. This is exactly it. But the other thing you did with the backlight that I think is so cool is you did something that my editing does, which is why I think I edit photos a particular way now, is it flattens the image. When you backlight a photo, you automatically drop the saturation, you automatically drop the contrast. It's inevitable. It's just part of the way that light reacts to your light sensor, or film if you're shooting film. And I think that was something that was really cool about this, was you did it naturally without having to do a lot of Photoshop stuff later. The other thing backlight does is it lifts the shadows, which is another thing I typically tend to do. So if you look at your tone curve is on an angle. I can't do this backwards thing in the mirror, but whatever. If you're in Lightroom and you've got your tone curve and it's just straight line from top to bottom, what you're doing when you lift your shadows is you're taking your whole shadow curve and just throwing it up. You're not even making a bend in the tone curve. You're literally just taking it from the bottom and just lifting it. And I do that almost all the time with my photos. Backlighting just kind of does it for you. So the fact that you actually even captured my tone and my editing style through nature was fire. I was like, she's amazing. She did it. So this just melted me. I was such a fan. So really love this. Love it.
When I took this, because I don't like shooting directly like this, because I like the contrast, I like the darker, and I want it to kind of be pinpointed. So when I took this, I saw that and I was like, I don't have to mess with it in Photoshop to make it into that flatter color scheme.
Absolutely.
It will just work. And so it's funny that you thought the same
I
thing.
did. As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, she just naturally edited her photo the same way I edit my photos regularly. So
This is in camera. All I
yeah,
did was up the sharpness a little bit so I can see what I like to do, which is like the
yeah.
little pieces falling. But like besides that, this is all what it was. It's
I
just
love it.
straight.
I love
I
this
put him
photo.
down, pose, and took a photo. So it's gonna
Freaking
like
love it. And I love the other two as well, but this photo was just, when I saw it, it made me laugh. Like I will tell you, I seriously like used to backlight constantly. That was a huge thing. And my dad used to tease me about it all the time because those of you who don't know, my dad was a wedding photographer for many, 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 many years. And he gives me such a hard time when I backlight things because that was like such a no-no with like 80s like film photography and stuff. When you're shooting a wedding, you don't want to backlight a photo. Like if you go back and look at like what portraiture at weddings looked like in like the 80s and 90s, like this was not cool. And so when he like saw me start doing, photography in Nashville and stuff like that, when I was like focusing on like, trying to make people look edgy and like hip and bleh, like that was a big thing. It was like, lens flare like across their face, like, make this rock star of lens flare on his face. Like that was so confusing to my father, who like, everything should have been even, everything should have been balanced, Kodak standards. But like that's why this photo just got me. As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my God, like this is great. She nailed it. What an image. Such an honor.
Yeah. All right. So I made a thank you instead of just pumping up our pages. They already know how to find us. So.
They know how to find us if they're following us. That was a fun. Oh my gosh, that photo. Yeah, that was a fun photo. That was the first time I took Zori out. That was a camping trip. I don't remember where we were. Just like that was by the fire pit. But yeah, that was. This has been a fun year with this stuff. Like it has been really good. Like I think we had a really good time. I'm looking forward to the next one in the spring. I'm looking forward to some of the people we've been reaching out to. I think it's going to be a good time. And I love that you guys actually like listening to us. Like that to me cracks me up sometimes. I mean it. Like as we can babble and babble to the mountains and the winds all we want. But the fact that like people reach out to us and enjoy what we're doing, just it makes me so happy. It really does. It makes me happy. That's all we're trying to do. So like if we can just keep like having fun and like learning more about other toy photographers, like that's awesome to me. That's absolutely awesome to me. So this is a blast.
I just have one more last and final thank you, and that is to Rachel for our theme songs.
Oh my gosh.
Was like, she put up with Scott and I be like, can you create this ridiculous idea that we have for a thing? And then she made it possible.
She did.
So
absolutely did. Absolutely did. It's absolutely crazy. She is such a talented individual. So fun. Such a good human being. And that is something else I will say. I think you'll agree with me with this. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but we have met some really wonderful human beings. And at the end of the day, whether you guys are toy photographers or not, like I think you are all really, really cool humans, and I have really enjoyed having conversations with you. And the more that I know Steph has been on my case about making my own podcast. I've had a lot of people on my case about making my own podcast. And I've thought a lot recently, and I don't necessarily know if it would even be focused around toy photography, because I am so interested in human beings. And, we've really been lucky to meet a lot of people from a lot of different places. We've met people from all over the place. I mean, I just think back on like people we've talked to from different countries, trying to set up like, and I give you mega props for this, trying to set up like times that actually worked for all of us. People in time zones in Japan, Netherlands and
Alan
like
in the Netherlands.
yeah, like
He
the
was
fact that you
drinking while we had coffee.
yeah, you were able to make that work. Like you are really impressive when it comes to that, and that to me has been so much fun this year. And if there's one great like toy photography aside, like I feel like 2020 was my toy photography year. 2021 was like my podcast year. Like I really had a great time doing toy photography in 2020, but in 2021 my favorite thing about this has been like this experience doing this whole SBN thing and stuff. And yeah, I can't wait to see like, I can't wait to talk to more people, in the spring. I think that's going to be so much fun. I can't wait to do it again and again. Like it's great. Yeah, just talking to really interesting people. So you're all
We have
really
some
fascinating.
special surprise non-toy photography episodes too.
We do.
That Scott came up with.
We do.
So
I had to. I was so curious. This is exactly why. This is why I was talking about like the idea of doing a podcast at some point of my own. Like, is I really want to. Like, I'm so fascinated by what people do. I'm so fascinated by people's interests. I'm so fascinated by what people create, and I've always been. It's always drawn me to art and music, and my whole life. Like, we're all really interesting, and I wish. Again, bourbon soapbox, that people would be more confident in their ideas of what they want to create and what they want to, and not be afraid of what people will think of it. No great ideas ever came from people who were like worried about whether or not people were going to like what they made, or whether or not people were going to enjoy it, or how many likes they were going to get on Instagram. Like, you think back on creativity, artists, and music, and sculptors and whatnot. They didn't have Instagram. They weren't basing anything on likes. They didn't have likes. They didn't have comments. They didn't have insight on Instagram and Facebook. Like, they were just doing it because they wanted to, and they hoped that people would like it. And so, just keep making stuff. Don't stop making stuff. It's not worth it to stop. So that's my opinions. And on that, I literally finished the Angels and
The bourbon.
So we're in good shape now.
I think that should be the name of your podcast, is Bourbon Soapbox.
I've considered that, just like me, just like drinking with people with interesting hobbies and just like talking about it until like the bottle's gone, and they're just like, okay, can we please sign off? This has gotten really weird. He's still talking. Like, they're exiting out before I'm even done. They're like, okay,
Yeah.
bye. Wait, I'm not finished. Let's come back. But yep.
I think we went way over our time.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, we're just
Like
like
crazy.
whatever.
Hour and a half. Whatever.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you. So we're gonna sign off. I'm gonna hit the magic button. But
Bye,
thanks
magic
for
button.
tuning in. And if you guys haven't missed some of the episodes, please watch them. There's some great people that we featured, and check them out. All right.
Really great people.